So let's ask this question. So you're a father of two, all right? So with your two, if you found out that they were, let's say they go online and they were looking at some character, some wahoo.
Give me a better example.
Let's say your kids were watching Nick Fuentes.
Okay.
All right. And Nick Fuentes has been in the media because he recently got in good with Kanye West, and then he got an invite, or he was spotted at Mar-a-Lago with Trump. And you're like, if your kids were watching Nick Fuentes,
is he a racist?
Yes.
Okay. Now, is he the guy that Trump invited to dinner or lunch or something?
No, he invited Kanye to dinner, and Nick Fuentes just kind of went with him.
But that was the other guy that showed up.
Yeah, he was the other guy that showed up.
Okay.
And then said he didn't know him. So, like, if your kids were watching Nick Fuentes and, like, listening to what Nick Fuentes said, and the only thing that Nick Fuentes basically said that you agreed with was, men should really work out. Nick Fuentes said that, and you were like, yeah. Would you still let your boys listen or, like, agree to, like, or not at least have a conversation with them going, yeah, guys, like, you can listen to that thing that Nick Fuentes puts out there, like, you should work out, but is that really who you should be listening to?
No, because Nick Fuentes is one channel.
Yeah,
and I don't think we raised our boys to be one channel boys. Now, let's not forget that my boys were put in a completely experimental school before grade 1 in pre-K, where they were only spoken to 100% in Spanish for 8 years of school. For 8 years of school, my sons were only spoken to in Spanish. So by virtue, like, we wouldn't be the kind of folks that would have our kids listening to one channel of anything. So if my son Gus, who is more apt to be the one that would listen to something that was more one direction, started bringing up this guy's name, no, there would be a very lively debate. There might be some color in that debate, because
colorful language,
because it's abhorrent. It's abhorrent.
But aren't enough. But that's what I mean. A lot of young men.
And go look that up on your phone if you don't know what abhorrent is. I use purview, and what was the other one?
I don't even remember. I just like making
extrapolate.
fun of. I just think. Everyone that's watching at home, obviously, that I use. I have a large vernacular myself, but I think it's funny because most people, we have to, like, dumb things down to, like, a 7th grade level. And I don't say dumb things down.
Sure.
Most people don't read above a 7th grade level, and so, like, using big words become complex, and that's when people want to fight you. So I just learned, like, I'm either going to tell you what I mean, or I'm just not going to say it at all because, well.
You know what, dude?
If you got to Google what I said,
then it's
not
effed
funny.
up, though? You know what's effed up?
What?
Is that if you use the same vocabulary that I use, which you have the same access to because you're as educated, it's deemed differently than if I use it.
It's always going to be deemed differently.
I know, but that's I just want to point that out. Like, it's just, it's like, oh God, he's talking so like, but if I do it, it's
so
like,
not.
We're
black.
talking the same. We're talking the same way. We're communicating the same thing. So that was the other interesting thing that I wanted to say. That I wanted to give you a compliment on this podcast, because one of the things you talked about that you wanted to do was you wanted to teach people other tools for dialogue.
Yeah,
and I think that by doing what we're doing, we're achieving that.
I appreciate it. I think just having conversations is a lot easier when you don't know everything.
When you accept that you don't know everything, or when you're willing to, like, learn something new.
Yeah.
And that's why there's no reason for people who are hardcore left or right to necessarily tune into a show like this, because they're not programmed or ready to accept, like, more of a central view of, like, hey, there's good and bad on both sides of the fence, man.
I don't know about both sides, but I can definitely know that there are people, the majority of the world actually is like, oh, I don't know anything about that. Please explain it to me. Like, I think that is a majority of the world. And because most people, they just don't have time. Like, literally, I think this was funny because I was watching, what was the name of that, I'm asked the producer, what was the name of that documentary that we were watching on HBO? The guy with the hair and he wears the over.
This is off camera. This is our question to our producer Eli off camera.
This is awesome. This place is awesome.
This is awesome. What's his name though? The guy with the hair.
Oh, Andrew. I just
Andrew something, and he's like, "This is awesome," or whatever. Anyway, in it, he's like interviewing, like he literally just takes a microphone, puts it in their face, and is like, "So why are you here at the Trump rally?" And people tell him, and he goes, "Oh," and he doesn't say anything. He just lets them talk, and they share their opinion.
This place rules.
This place rules. Thank you. It's on HBO Max or HBO, and it's like this place rules, and he just goes up there and he puts this thing in his face, and he's just letting them talk. I mean, he literally just doesn't say anything. These people like willingly just start talking about themselves and about how they feel. And he's just like, okay, like he just holds this mic in front of their face. And honestly, as a person who's done a lot of interviews across the country, across the United States, I've started to realize that is very true. You put a microphone in somebody's face and they just open up to you about everything. Like it's like they just don't have anywhere to express themselves. And so they're like, oh, this is my chance. But when you watch that guy's show and you watch it and he's talking about these issues, he's kind of like, he's helping people have dialogues. But most of the time, it feels like they're just having inner monologues. And they're just now voicing their inner monologue to someone with a recording camera.
I think that's the power of video and audio and having somebody that can, first of all, it doesn't happen without him. It doesn't happen without him having the guts and the courage to go into a place where there's turmoil, right? Divisiveness.
Yeah.
And to ask those kinds of questions because who knows what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that, we're a young nation, right? We're what, 300 plus years old? Am I correct? Am I wrong? Producer?
280, 290.
Okay.
Like
and how old is the English monarch?
Oh.
Or the Russian oligarchy?
Well, the Russian oligarchy is relatively youngish.
Okay, the Russian.
They've had to go through. They've had to go. They had to go through a
But
couple.
but the Chinese, think about how long these folks have been around for before we've been around.
We're probably good. We're pretty good at the Japanese emperor.
Okay,
Yeah.
So we're
a couple
babies.
centuries.
We're babies, and so I think as babies, as we develop in this capitalist form that we have here, one of the things you go through is like this voice thing, and I think with COVID and the restrictions, that were placed on people and how they perceived those restrictions, it caused a lot of a damper. It was a damper. And then you had post-COVID, which is this release of pressure, and you get a politicized, campaign, and you got people that are fired up, and you ask a couple good questions, and all of a sudden people just like, dude, if you're even have the attention span of 30 seconds in America and you turn the mic on someone else for 30 seconds, you're a king, because that 30 seconds, like you said, is gold. It gives them an opportunity. They feel like this might go somewhere. They're saying something to somebody out there that's going to be broadcast, that they're going to hear. They get to give their opinion. There's probably also an aspect of it that might be therapeutic in that it releases some of that bullshit and some of that angst and that energy that's negative, you hope. I think you're onto something, man. I think that more people want to talk, but the problem is that people they haven't taken the time to make themselves aware of other perspective and be able to handle other perspective.
Quick perspective check right now. Would you consider yourself, and I don't mean politically, I don't want to know if you're a D or an R because I don't care. Would you say that you were more reasonable, rational, or outright want what you want? Reasonable, rational, or want what you want?
I'm reasonable.
All right, so reasonable. So when I say reasonable, my concept of reasonable is you're a person that's like, hey, I'm willing to listen to what you have to say to formulate an opinion.
My counter to that is that if I do 2 hours of work for you and I go to get paid and I expect to be paid $100 and you give me 75, I want you to explain why the work I did was only worth 75 and not 100. And if the explanation is reasonable to me, then I'll accept the $75.
I would never accept $75 if we had already agreed upon terms.
That's why I would always ask.
Yeah,
What about my service was lacking in the $25?
Yeah, I'm rational. It's like I've even gone to people that are like, oh, we're not going to pay for this, or we're not going to pay for that coverage, or oh, well, these were really short things, and all right, fine, then I just won't do it. I'll accept your $50, but don't ever ask me for another favor again. Don't ever ask for my services again. And when people ask me about you, I'm going to let them know you were terrible to work with. Like,
and that's not my friend. Okay, and that's the difference because I'm not necessarily those aren't my. That's not my go-to.
Oh no, I'm going to make you feel like shit.
No, I know I think that's the difference.
But
you're explaining the difference between reasonable and rational.
Okay, so the rational person's like, I'm done.
No,
the reasonable person.
It sounds like the rational person is going to be a little bit more vindictive. After
I'm a rational person.
No, it sounds like from your example,
that
the rational person is going to be like, that's fine, $50, but guess what? You're going to get fucked on Yelp and all the other bullshit. And the reasonable person is going to be like, okay, $75, I'll take the $75, and I'm not going to work for that person ever again.
Which you're not going to stand in their way either,
because he's not going to get paid. No, I'm not going to do that.
Okay. Well,
only because I do a lot of negotiating, and if I did it every time, then I'd have a stack of people that it would be a bad mark. Does that make sense?
I can agree with that.
From my perspective.
No. It's a business perspective. It's looking at it.
You said non-political. So
non-political, yeah. So
there you go.
Yeah. So you're trying to say like, look, I need to make money, and if I want to make money, I'm like, well, I'm not going to do business with that person because what do they call it? Like a shyster or a lens?
They're not valuing me.
They renege. They renege on their deals, and that means they take back. Like,
after the service has been provided.
Yeah, you're like, whoa.
I've had good friends of mine who people respect who have been like, do you still want your 5%? And it's just like, what did I do to not deserve the 5%?
Yeah, when did we change our
terms?
You
didn't sell your house for as much as you thought it was worth, even though I told you it was worth X. Okay.
No, I don't want my money.
So you know what they do? Do you know what they do next time? They don't hire me.
Okay, and then they call you when their house still doesn't sell for what they want.
Or they complain to me about how bad the broker was that they hired instead of me.
But they told me I could get $100 million. And
right.
It's like, you know what? Everyone always says that.
Same story, bro.
Yeah, it's like everyone always says, like, people make claims all the time like that. Oh, I could get you this much. I'm like, could you?
How many times have you not had the conversation about consultants who work regularly and consultants who don't work regularly?
Oh, the consultant who works regularly is normally the person who just says, yep, you're right. The consultant that doesn't work regularly is the person that goes, hey, you need to change this.
Here are some active things that you need to do right now for your company or for your personnel to make them better, more efficient.
Yeah, most kids don't. Again, most people don't have that conversation because they're like, oh, well, you told me everything I was doing was wrong. And I didn't tell you.
No, it goes back to what you were saying. Like it goes back to like, you touched on this like 3 or 4 episodes ago. You talked about fame as currency. It's the same idea, man.
I wish fame
but
was
who
currency.
But who they put value in? They put the value in the person that backed up what they believed.
Yeah. Yeah.
They hired the
belief
agent
system.
They hired the agent that told them they could make $20,000 more than they thought they could make, not the agent that told them that they would probably be safe to make 80. And so they made a decision based on what somebody told them who had skin, who had an intentionality, because they got 2.5% of that $400,000 deal. That was like at least 10 grand, somewhere around there. So wait a minute. I got 10 grand on the table. That's the kind of broker that you want to find. The kind of broker that was taught to never take your intentionality into any transaction. The money that you make in a commission of a real estate transaction is just the exhaust of the work. That's all it is, man. It's all it should ever be. The 1.2 might be lickety split easy, 30K to you. It also might be like the worst experience you've ever had, depending on, who you are. And a lot of times when people take, $3 million listings, it's like, oh my God, I'm going to make $80,000. So they're like, whatever you want. We're going to give you all the photographs. We're going to give you everything you need. Da, 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 da. Oh my God, yes, we're Sotheby's.
They're gonna suck up so much of your time that you're gonna miss out on all the other. Listen, I once knew a guy who told me, give me the small $5,000 client every month, keep the $100,000 client every month.
Yeah.
$100,000 client, they're going to bother you all the time because they see how much money they spent you.
They're going to work that commission off of you before you even earn it.
The $5,000 guy, he might call you once.
He's happy that you were able to help him.
He's
it's
like,
difference.
I might give you like, oh, sure, man, whatever, like it's cool, like whatever the thing. Because they're not trying to like I'm talking about from my industry, I used to be in the lobbying game. And one of the things I always told people was the $5,000 client ain't calling you every day. It is the $100,000 client who's like, where's this at? Where's that? And then sometimes, I had one client and they had a major multi-million-dollar deal with the State Department every damn day. Every day. I was getting a phone call, a text, and an email. Like, where we at? Where are we at? What are we doing? What's this? I'm like, yo, Congress ain't even in session. Chill. But to them, they were like, well, this is how much money it's worth to you, so why aren't you putting up more effort? And in my mind was, the $5,000 client keeps the lights on. They do. The home run, that might set me up for retirement. But the home run, that's not the one that keeps the lights on.
See, in the real estate world, the home run is like it's like a ego thing. It's like, oh, I did a $3 million deal, right? I've reached a certain level, and I'll tell you that if you ask a client of mine, I've had $1 million clients, and I've had I started out the $87,000 client. I treated them all the same. I gave them all the same amount of time. I probably gave them too much of my time, but the beautiful thing was that I was not on the internet, so I wasn't dealing with their bullshit. I was actually only dealing with, I closed 92% of the transactions I wrote, which means I didn't have a lot of fail sales. I wasn't the agent that was constantly running to the office with my principal broker going, oh my God, escrow, I lost this. I just didn't play in that game. But that was me. I also am not like making $500,000 in real estate. I also wasn't like doing real estate during this last big, huge bear run where people were making $300,000-$400,000. I was like already totally turned off to it. So, and also don't forget that a lot of my power and my ability to get my clients smoker deals or put them in the right place are taken away when you've got 72 people bidding. I'm not heavy on cash buyers. So, right. So in a frenzied market, who speaks first? Cash speaks first, right?
Cash is king.
So if you don't have a lot of cash people, then you're like everybody else. And then you're writing letters, and then those were made illegal. And then you're just trying to get into the pocket of the real estate broker that's got the listing. So maybe you make an impact and blah, 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 blah. And at the end of the day, it becomes about, highest and best.
Well, I'll say this much. Mark, number one, it's great to be able to get to know you, to get to know your family, your kids, and to see that, and I'll just be transparent, you are the black sheep of like a lot of groups, but you're the black sheep everyone talks to. That's the weird part. You are the black sheep that everyone talks to. They may talk shit about you when you walk away,
I know
But
that.
they talked about they talk to you there. Like a lot of people that are black sheeps in my world, they don't talk. They're like, oh, that's a black sheep. You're like, don't say anything to them.
Well, you know why? Because most black sheeps have usually done one horrible crucible thing that's like f- them.
Yeah.
And that carries with them. And that's not really who I am. I'm just not a joiner. I'm just not a joiner by nature. And so then for that fact, when the people in my group, my white group, get together and they start, what would I always tell you? I say I always feel comfortable when there's more than 3 white people and no other people in the room starting to make decisions.
You're like, I'm so uncomfortable.
I'm like, this is not a representation. Like whatever we come up with is not going to be the voice of what is out there. Like you just, no way. So yeah. And you know what, dude? When you're the black sheep, you get into trouble. You have to sit down. You get called into people's meetings. You get called into, when you're in academia, you get called into universities. You get called into this, that, the other thing. You have, run-ins with law enforcement. This never been arrested. Never been arrested.
You've never been arrested.
Ever in my life, dude. And I've pushed the edge further than most people have ever done it.
I caught a cop.
And I'm not hard. I'm not like some hard gangster.
I caught a cop a dick one time. They put me in cuffs,
dude.
And I literally just was walking by. I was like, dick.
I've never called a cop a dick. That never did that. But like what I'm getting at is there's a renegade. There's a part of me that's rebel renegade that doesn't do it for any self-effacing reason, but just like I just question the moment that someone starts trying to solidify something and put something in a column, rules, laws, regulations. I wonder, what do they have to stand to gain? Is this for us, or is this like, if I really extrapolate this, did they end up moving a larger piece into their pie than for everybody else? And 9 times out of 10, they eat more than everybody else does. And they eat more than they need to. And that's a problem, dude.
Eat as much as you want, but eat only that which you need.
And that's where it's all backwards here.
Yeah.
It's backwards, man.
I can't believe people actually. I can't believe people. That's a dog telling us. That's
We're
a
talking
dog
about
saying,
food. We're talking about food. And the dog heard eat, and he's like, yeah, I'm down for that.
He's like, I need food. But when I heard those types of things, like, look, I've grown up. I've seen many different situations, many different types of people, and at the end of the day, the only thing that becomes the commonality is that none of us are common.
What's the one thing that gets you down?
The one thing that gets me down,
like that you battle with every day, that's Keel's personal thing. That even like your a boyfriend or a lover might be like, yeah, even spending time with you, they're like, because they love you, they're like, if there's this one thing about a Keel that he should work on, what is that one thing?
Other than my cleanliness, because I'm a colossal pig.
I've seen your condo.
Yeah. It's like I'm a colossal pig, and it's not because I don't work hard. Like I am a consummate. Like I get up at 5:30.
You're a hustler, bro.
And I don't go to bed till like 1 a.m. And people are like, "Why?" And I go, "Well, there's work to be done. There's money to be made." And people are like, "But there's all these other things you didn't do." I'm like, "That don't mean shit."
I'm watching like Netflix series for 5 hours, bro.
Yeah, I'll put a Netflix series on,
okay,
but I'm also like writing or I'm reading or I'm doing something else. I'm always working. I think the thing that gets me down the most is that my unfulfilled success.
Okay, so back up though. So that means if you've had unfulfilled success, that means that you've experienced success.
I have experienced success beyond belief.
Give me top 2.
Top 2. Well, if I was going to give top 2, it would be like I'm an uncle and a brother and a son of an amazing an amazing family. That'd be like number 1. And number 2 is that I've literally lived life to the fullest. Like I'm successful. I'm a success because in business I was successful. Politics, I didn't win the one office that I ran for, but I raised more money than anyone else in that campaign, and I've continued to raise money for people. I built things. I've passed laws. I mean, literally, The NFL would not be such a supportive of LGBT rights, but for my relationship with those people in the NFL at one point. The NFL, when they supported marriage equality, was direct line of communication all the way up to Roger Goodell. Like, I'm not even going to pretend like I didn't have a role in it anymore. I mean, for a long time, I was like, a lot of people were like, oh, Akil, this person's going to take credit, but don't worry, we're going to give you the. All right. I used to not care because it wasn't about me. It was about getting things done. But that was the line. I remember when the NFL was on the verge of not supporting LGBT rights in marriage.
Give me
equality.
a year. Like, what are we talking about?
Oh, this is
here?
like 2013.
So
2013.
when you talk about this and you're talking about legacy,
Yeah.
your legacy, like you want people to know that a part of it's important in your tapestry, your story is the legacy that you had this relationship with the NFL in 07. Is that what you said?
This is around 2012.
Okay, so
Yeah.
add 5 years. Sorry.
Well, so you know, and obviously we're going to do my episode at one point.
I know, but you can still talk about it here. This is
Yeah,
still good
at
talk,
some point
dude.
we'll do. But I was just saying, like, so the NFL and I developed a relationship. One of my teammates, actually several of my teammates. So there was Dominique Foxworth.
From
He was a defensive back. Played with me at the University of Maryland.
okay,
Dominique Foxworth is, I think he was on Undisputed or one of those shows, and he goes on.
NFL guy.
Yeah, he played for the Ravens and somebody else. Dominic Foxworth was also the NFL Players Association president, and he's on this series, and they're talking about how it's really being pushed, these LGBT rights. And Dominique is on, he's on ESPN, and he goes, listen, one of my former teammates very much struggled with this. We watched him go from like this really happy-go-lucky guy to like, just not the same person. And so we know this has a human effect on people.
This is another guy who's gay.
No.
in the NFL.
No. Dominique Foxworth is straight.
Okay.
Played in the NFL, great career, was the NFL Players Association president. Dominique was talking about me.
Oh, okay, got it.
But again, a lot of people had said, well, don't use Akil's name and things like that. But because, again, they're trying to, at the time,
Was there not already a pro player who had come out openly or not?
So you had guys like David Kopay and Ezra Tutola and Ron Simmons, and they had all come out as LGBT during after their careers.
After their careers,
Yeah, but the thing that was really different between what Dominique was facing and what the story narrative is like you heard these people go, "Oh, my experience was great," and because they don't want to be insulting and they don't want to insult the sport and they don't want to drag it down. My experience was horrible. It was awful. It was
the exact same experience that they had all had, correct?
Most of them would say that they understood. They were with me. Like they were like, "Oh, I had the same thing happen." I was like, "So why did you say that?" Like most of the times, you don't know how to say. Like so, there was a situation, and Michael Sam becomes the first NFL player drafted. Right, Michael Sam gets drafted, and I want to say like the 8th round. Right, when I was coming up, the 8th round wasn't even around. Like there was like 5 rounds in NFL draft.
No,
so
it was 5th round.
Yeah, it was 5 rounds.
If you
So I
were
was like,
past the 5th round and like whatever pick you were,
you were like
ooh.
nobody really said anything.
Yes.
The 8th round wasn't even there. So I think they went up to 6 and then 7 and then 8 because it was like, oh, we just got to make this thing a show. But Michael Sam becomes the first openly gay paid player taken in the draft.
What year is this? Do you remember?
Oh, I can't even remember at this point. Maybe 2015.
Okay.
But when Michael does that, somebody asked me what I thought, and I go, well, he's Dwight Freeney's size without Dwight Freeney's speed. And they were like, well, you can't talk about him like that. You're just jealous. And I'm like, I'm not jealous. I'm giving a real analytical backdrop to this, is that Michael Sam was a weak side defensive end. That means they were putting 2 blockers on the opposite defensive end. He had a hell of a season because they knew his teammate was better. Then I worked with one of his teammates, Dominique Hamilton. And Dominique and I actually did a podcast together called The Big 3 and Me.
When was this?
This was 2021.
And what was the basic idea behind it?
Oh, the Big 3 podcast. It was basically three guys that all played sports, and we were all just talking about cryptocurrencies and life and stuff like that.
Let me ask you a question. You know, like they've created a profile around cryptocurrency where a lot of the folks that have been the salespeople of cryptocurrency and have really pushed cryptocurrency are former athletes. And that seems to be an interesting, not necessarily profile, but stereotype, because you are also a highly achieved professional athlete and you're heavily into crypto and you've got the whole FTX thing going on. And 9 times out of 10 people who don't know anything about crypto would say, get the fuck out of crypto. And here you are and you're a crypto guy. So like, why are you still in crypto, dude?
Because I believe in the future of the innovation. There's this thing called GTH Chat or .io or it's basically these AI programs that people are writing. A lot of the AI programs are backed by some sort of cryptocurrency or crypto kind of industry.
So okay, so I want to make sure I understand something correctly. So when you talk about something's backed by cryptocurrency, do you mean cryptocurrency or do you actually mean blockchain?
No, cryptocurrency. So there's some sort of cryptocurrency that was able to fund these projects.
Okay.
So remember, to get on the New York Stock Exchange and to get funding, you got to jump through all these fucking hoops, right? But in the crypto world, if I buy your token or your coin, I now funded your project. So now while you're building your project with my money, the idea would be that my return on investment would be your success. So the better you do on whatever project you're building, and then everyone else wants it, and the only way they can get access to your project is to buy the token or the coin. That means the price of mine goes up, or I have to sell it back to somebody. That is a mechanism in which I get excited about, because instead of Wall Street controlling what I can invest in, I control what I can invest in.
And see, for me, I think what is interesting about crypto is the technology behind the decision making of the valuation, which is the blockchain theory.
Yeah.
Which is how you back up information.
Yep.
And what we found out about blockchain is that it's incorruptible. And that's where I think so. What's going to be
for 40 years?
they're gonna it's gonna be continued to use.
No, but we've already been using it for 40 years. It's just nobody recognized it.
They didn't recognize its value.
Yeah.
They didn't recognize its value in the successful closure of all the chains, which is what crypto is based on.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: so, do you who got you into crypto? Was it another athlete that got you into crypto?
Well,
be honest.
He's an.
Was he a former athlete?
He's a former athlete. He's also a former naval. I think he's an army pilot, a helicopter pilot. So the guy's name is Mike Novogratz, right? Okay. He's one of the wealthiest men in America. Phenomenal guy. Worked at Fortress. He's a hedge fund guy. So he's been a person that's been around extreme wealth. And Novo, as everyone knows him as, is a huge wrestling fan. So I've been to his house. Dude's dope. Well, Novo
wrestling, like real wrestling, or
like NCAA,
legit wrestling.
Legit.
Okay.
Like Novo used to have like the soul. He once had a Soulful Sunday, and he actually had Kanye West come and play the piano
during wrestling matches.
No, like he just does these Soulful Sundays.
Oh, okay.
Like he has events at his house. Like
got it.
And then he had a podcast called Next with Novo, which, by the way, I loved. But anyway, so Novo was a phenomenal guy, and
black dude, white dude,
white guy, white guy who's 100% as liberal as it gets. But Novo is, he's a New York guy, so making money, being able to talk to folks. So while we're having these conversations, and Novo's explaining Bitcoin to people, and I think this is around 2017. Novogratz is explaining this to us, and as we kind of start to understand what like the Bitcoin is, a lot of us start getting into it slowly. And as we are all getting into this, we then say, hey, folks, this is something that we can all invest in. A short time later, everybody starts getting in.
What year is this?
It's 2017, 2018.
Okay.
There's a run up.
So we're talking right before COVID.
Yeah. Well, 2 years before, 3 years before, because nobody's really thinking about it. There's a huge run up in the market. Everyone loves it. 2016, 2017, everyone's running up. They're making money. And I bought like fractional shares because I didn't have $10,000 cash laying around at the time. So I was like, well, I'll just buy a little bit here or there. But as I've watched and I've seen it go up and I've seen it go down, there's been some money to be made, like Dogecoin and other operabilities. So, you start to recognize that you can make a little bit of money in the industry, but then you start meeting people in this industry and you start listening to their stories. And then you start realizing, there was one lady at Coinbase. She got into crypto. I'll tell you, I think her name was Maria. She got into crypto because legitimately her family in Venezuela lost every dollar. Because remember, Venezuela's money was worthless at one point.
Right.
Literally. And she was like, I never want to feel that experience again. I think when you meet people who can give you real life experiences, real life stuff, no, I lost everything. Not like I'm a rich kid and my dad, we went from a 800,000 square foot house to a 30,000 square foot house. And you're like, yeah, I don't feel fucking bad for you, little. That's how I feel. But when you meet someone like this, you're like, oh my God. Your family, legitimately lost everything because there was no way to secure their money. The banks wouldn't let them pull out of stuff. Their family, the country took their family's land. You're just wow, you really don't have anything.
But they had relationships, right? Come on.
She had ability to get out.
Right? There's
and
support
restart. And restart.
Okay.
And, she's in her 40s now. She said this all happened when she was a teenager.
But the main thing was that this is where they decided to focus their energy and attention to rebuild their empire.
She has.
Right.
She
saw this.
She has. So yeah, she took advantage of it. And I think that's something that we all start to learn about.
So then how's the road been for you post FTX meltdown and I know you say this, you keep saying you're fine, but how were you able to be fine?
I'm not an idiot.
Okay.
I take profits.
So
I mitigate loss. I watch out for other opportunities. I buy property. I'm not a dumbass. I'm not. I'm going to put all my life savings into this.
Right.
Yo,
So
whoa.
So that was the big take out of this is that you were. So there's two things. I'm going to end with this for me. One is you're diversified. You didn't put all your money in crypto. The second thing is it's two-parter. Maybe you should think about this for another episode, but why don't we teach
financial literacy.
Our kids this shit in middle school, number one. And number two, if we changed voting laws to 16 as opposed to 18, would our high schools look different?
And folks, with that, we'll end because Mark gave us some new topics for the next podcast. Thank you for joining me with my one-on-one conversation, no cap style, with my homeboy Mark Togney. And as always, folks, this has been a Sunday Fun Day podcast.
Thanks for having me, Akil.
My name is Akil Patterson. That's Mark, the instigator Togney. And you all have a great day and an even better tomorrow. Why? Well, because it's just another day to smile. Cheers.